Hi, this is the team from Easel, and today we're going to be talking about how to identify in real time the feedback that your CNC is giving you and how to adjust cut settings to help with the feedback that your CNC is giving you. So as you're carving, your CNC machine is going to be giving real-time pieces of information to you that you can use to determine if your cut settings are working well or if they might be struggling and why they might be struggling. Things like chips, sound, finish, and tool condition all are feedback that the machine gives you. The intention of this video is to help recognize the feedback, understand what's causing it, and then apply adjustments if necessary. This can help maintain tool life, give you a better surface finish, and increase your tool efficiency. So the first thing we're going to talk about are chips. Chips are small pieces or fragments of material that are cut away from the workpiece by the tool during machining. And so essentially, as your machine is cutting through your material, it's creating chips. Chips are one of the main ways that we can identify if there's a problem with maybe our cut settings. And there's three ways to help identify that. The first is if your chips are powdery, dust, or very fine, likely your feed rate is too slow, and instead of cutting your material, your bit is rubbing against the material. Alternatively, if your feed rate is too high or your chip evacuation is poor, you might see long stringy chips, and that just means you need to slow down your feed rate to get a better kind of chip load. Ideally, what you're looking for with chips is small pieces of material that are being cut off and pushed away, very similar to the image on the screen where we talked about chips. The last one that you'll see are burnt or dark chips, and that means that there's excessive heat. And that means your feed rate is either too low or your spindle speed is too high. And so you want to adjust those accordingly. Another common issue if your cut settings are having an issue is your bit breaking. And there are a couple causes for this, and we're just going to kind of talk through them really quickly. The first is that your feed rate is too high. And if your bit's breaking and your feed rate is too high, try reducing the feed rate or using a higher quality, harder bit. If your cut is too deep or your step over is too large, that can also cause the bit to break, and you'll want to reduce the depth or step over and make multiple passes instead. I would say this is probably the one that I see most often, is that the depth per pass is too high. So you want to try reducing that slightly and seeing if that helps, especially if your bit is breaking. The other one is poor work holding or vibration. So if your tool is not sitting tight into the collet and clamped correctly, you can see your bit moving inside the collet, and that can cause vibration or it's not held enough, and then it'll break. We have a video on how to set your bit into the collet, which we will link below, so check that out if you have any questions about how to do that appropriately. And then oftentimes if your bit is dull, it can also break, so we recommend replacing it with a proper bit, or making sure that the bit that you have works well with your material. We have a video on bit types as well. We'll link that below as well, so you have that information. Next, and something we talked about a little bit, but we're going to get a little bit deeper into, is if you see burning on your tool path. And so if you're seeing burning, there's a couple of causes for that. One is that your RPM to feed rate, RPM is too high and your feed rate is too low. Try increasing the feed rate while reducing the RPMs to keep the bit moving, but also prevent heat buildup. Also, poor chip evacuation, so you want to make sure that you're clearing chips as they're being created to reduce friction. And then dull tool or resin-rich wood, use a sharp carbide bit, and if needed, like a low axial load to reduce depth of cut, or reduce the depth of cut. And so essentially, if your tool is dull or you're doing a resin-rich wood, you want to use a very sharp bit and reduce your depth of cut. Another thing that we see a lot is what's called CNC chatter. And this can happen for a number of reasons, and chatter really looks like you'll see kind of an inconsistent finish on the edge of your CNC carve. And that's that your maybe your tool's sticking out too long, maybe it's not sitting in the collet tight enough, and that can cause an issue. Another one might be that your workpiece is not secured, and so you want to make sure that your material is firmly clamped on your workpiece. If it's moving, that can cause a bunch of issues, so you want to make sure that you're clamping well. And then the other is that your feed rate is too high or your step over is too aggressive. Try reducing the step over and slightly increase the feed rate to keep the tool engaged smoothly. You just want to make sure that you're checking those things and doing that. And we recommend calculating cut settings before you jump into a carve. We have a video on how to calculate cut settings. We'll link that below. But this is just, again, real-time feedback that you can see and make small adjustments. And then finally, the other thing you'll see if your cut settings are off is maybe a poor surface finish. If your feed rate is too high, you'll see potentially a poor surface finish. Try a finishing pass at a lower feed rate and a lighter depth of cut for a smoother finish. If your feed rate is too low, try increasing the feed slightly to allow for proper shearing instead of smearing. And then your tool geometry is not suited. You want to make sure you're choosing the correct type of bit for what you're trying to do. Again, this is just a place where you can kind of identify what's happening as you're carving and make small adjustments to fix that. We'll link below. We have a little chart in our support center that says this is what's happening, this is what you can do to try to fix it. And I would recommend just using that chart. It's really easy to follow, and that's going to be the biggest resource for kind of identifying quickly and what you need to change so that you can keep carving and not worry about seeing these issues. Another thing I'll mention is just that, as you're changing these parameters, say you're seeing, poor chip quality, you want to change these parameters and then test and then see if it's working and then change them systematically. You don't want to change 3 at once because then it might fix it, but you might see a different problem, but you don't know what you changed. So change it systematically. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.